So, yeah. So, welcome everyone, and thanks for the invite from the Trust and all the associated bodies for inviting us down. It's good to get an opportunity to speak to people and talk to them about any concerns that they may have or questions they may have about any of our guidance. But serious incident reporting, and in particular safeguarding, has obviously been an issue of recent media attention and of recent importance. And will continue to be so from now on, obviously. So it's great to be here, and I will speak to you about our serious incident reporting generally, but I'll try and keep a focus on safeguarding as well. There has been a lot in the media over the last year or so over the number of incidents. So there's always a focus and a fear about, are we doing things right, and have we done the right thing, and are we doing the right thing? And in general, what I want to talk to you about today is about what you should do when something happens, because I wanted to make it clear to you that the Commission recognises that regardless of what procedures you have in place and policies you have in place and checks and controls, things go wrong sometimes. So, that's not the end of the world as long as we deal with those things that go wrong properly. And included in dealing with those things properly is talking to the Commission. So through this presentation today, I'm hoping to show you some examples of where people have come to us and our reaction to those serious incident reports, even in extreme circumstances. And then conversely, I'm also giving you an example of where people haven't and what we have done as a regulator when we later find out about the incident ourselves. I will have time for some questions and answers at the end of this, but it's a small enough group, and so feel free to jump in at any time if there is something important that you want to ask. But I suppose for video purposes, it would be better if you could keep everything to the end. Okay. So following the Oxfam story in February 2018, the Commission issued an alert for charity trustees to everyone on the register of charities that had indicated that they worked with vulnerable beneficiaries. Now, I'm using the term vulnerable beneficiaries because that's the term that the Commission use. I've actually just met recently with my colleagues in England, Wales and in Scotland, in OSCAR and CCW. And they're actually talking about changing the terminology just to make it more relevant to people. So basically for us, vulnerable beneficiaries is all children and adults with care needs, okay? But hopefully people will understand what vulnerable beneficiaries are. We issued that alert to some 4,000 charities, and in the alert we told charity trustees that they were required to have appropriate policies and procedures in place for working with vulnerable beneficiaries, and robust controls to ensure they're effective. It's not just a matter of having the policies and procedures, but you must have robust controls in place for ensuring that they are properly applied. The Commission also pointed out to charity trustees who work overseas that there's an obvious greater risk to, in relation to the protection of vulnerable beneficiaries. Trustees have been advised to revisit their policies to ensure that they are sufficient, that the controls in place are effective, and that they must be aware of the reporting requirements relevant to ourselves and any other regulator that you may be registered with. In addition to the alert, we wrote to a number of organisations which our register searches revealed that they had told us that they did work with children or vulnerable adults, but had not indicated or confirmed that they had appropriate policies in place. So thankfully, there was only a small number that fell into that category, but we wrote to each of the charity trustees within that and said, you need to take immediate action to address this situation. In a few of them, it was actually just misinformation, so they actually did have the procedures in place. But it shows you that even charities that are well established, that are registered with the Commission, can and have been operating for some time, can sometimes fail to ensure that they have the most basic of policies and procedures in place. Okay. So in addition to our alert, then we also had a safeguarding seminar, and it was in May, and it was organised and held in the NICFA offices in Belfast. The seminar was aimed in particular to those charities who worked to deliver services to vulnerable beneficiaries overseas because of the particular media attention and the Oxfam story. It sought to remind charity trustees of their duties and responsibilities, and the Commission set out to raise awareness of the relationship between safeguarding practice and the delivery of good governance. Inform charities about their duty to report serious incidents to the Commission, including safeguarding matters. Identify the issues facing Northern Ireland charities in relation to safeguarding employees, volunteers and the vulnerable beneficiaries, and to support charities to improve their safeguarding practice and ensure that their charities' values are reflected in all areas of operation. The seminar was chaired by our Chief Executive, Francis McCandless, and around 90 charities were represented at that meeting, and the majority of the attendees were charity trustees themselves. And the Commission, in conjunction with NICFA, are also hosting a Beyond Safeguarding seminar next week on the 11th of December, focused on protecting the good work of charities by ensuring that ethical culture and behaviour is paramount and actively promoted. Thanks. So following the event, the Commission has published the following resources on our website. So on our website, it's just entitled, as you can see, Essential Safeguarding Good Practice Seminar Resources. So in that tab on the website, which can be found under Charity Essentials tab, Safeguarding Resources, so 2 clicks from our home page, is the notes from that seminar, quite detailed notes from the seminar, including the Q&A session. So there might be a lot of questions and then answers asked that would be relevant to your charity. So that's a good resource for you to have a look at. And then the presentations from each of the people that were there on the day. My very small screen, apologies for the printout as well, but it's just really to draw your attention to the existence of the decision trees that are available again through our website. So the 3 UK disclosure services and ACRO, ACRO's Criminal Records Office, have drawn up the decision trees to help guide organisations in deciding whether they need to obtain a criminal record check as part of their recruitment processes, depending on the situation. The trees, you can't read it on the screen, unfortunately, but when you go in, you'll see it asks you, are you recruiting for volunteers? Are you recruiting for staff? Are they going to be working directly with beneficiaries or not? And are they working overseas or not? And then once you go through those various options, it tells you what legally you must have and what must do and what best practice it is in terms of any checks that you must carry out on those employees and or volunteers. This is also available in the Safeguarding Resources page on the Commission's website. So bear with me a wee minute. So charity trustees are responsible for ensuring those benefiting from or working with their charity are not harmed in any way through contact with it. They have a legal duty to act prudently and take all reasonable steps within their power to ensure that this does not happen. This is particularly important where beneficiaries are vulnerable persons or children in the community. Trustees are expected to find out what the relevant law is, how it applies to their organisation, and to comply with it where appropriate. They should also adopt best practice as far as possible. The Commission insists on necessary protection policies and procedures being in place to safeguard vulnerable beneficiaries. The slides highlight where we look to seek assurances from those policies that are in place, from registration through to annual reporting. So for the video, I'll just read out what's on the slide. So at the registration application point, charities are required to provide detail of risks the trustees are aware of and how they are managed. The registration application also requires trustees to read guidance about the safeguarding of children and vulnerable adults. So that's a must, you must do that. And when submitting your annual accounts information each year, charities are also required to confirm or reaffirm that they have appropriate safeguarding policies in place. Each charity is also required under annual reporting to declare that any serious incidents that have occurred have been reported to the Commission during that year. And you're signing that as a declaration of truth, and you're also signing that on behalf of all the charity trustees. So it's not just the responsibility of the person submitting those returns to the Commission. You're saying that we as a collective are aware that any serious incident that has happened has been reported to the Commission. Okay. Thanks. So what is a serious incident? Well, I'm going to talk briefly about what we include in our guidance about what is a serious incident. But to be honest, there are so many permutations of charities in terms of size, where they're dealing with, how they're dealing with, whether they're dealing with vulnerable beneficiaries directly, dealing with matters of assets directly, or whether they're funding and supporting others to do that, that we can't get into the detail that you probably want as a charity trustee to lift and say, yes, here's every single box that must be ticked for my situation and my charity, and if one of those goes wrong, then I must report it to the Commission. So we do place a certain amount of trust on charity trustees to understand that an incident is serious themselves. And also, to be honest again, every time that we receive a phone call from a charity trustee who opens up the conversation saying, there's an incident in our office, I'm not sure if it's serious, we say, report it. Because I'll repeat this several times during this presentation, but you'll hopefully see that we deal with reports proportionally, and it's better to report it to us rather than us find out afterwards and maybe think, oh no, that was much serious than maybe you were giving me the detail over the phone. So we always say, if in doubt, report it, and it won't be held against you if you've done everything within your powers to do things right, okay? So the Commission actually regards a serious incident, as an adverse event, whether actual or alleged. It just has to be an allegation for it to be serious, okay? Which results in or risks a significant loss of charity money or assets, damage to charity property, harm to the work of the charity, its beneficiaries, or its reputation. And the most common types of incidents include frauds, thefts, significant financial losses, money laundering, criminal breaches, allegations of terrorism or extremism, and safeguarding issues, which is what we're trying to focus about today. Okay. So if a serious incident takes place, charity trustees are required to report what happened to the Commission and explain how it is being managed. Now, equally, I'll go on and repeat this, and I'm sorry if I do repeat myself, but it's about getting the message across. We don't expect war and peace. If you tell us about the incident and you give us enough details, then if we need further information, we will contact you. So, don't be worried about having to explain it or produce a 20 or 30 page investigation report. You're reporting an incident, you're giving us enough details to allow us to understand what the issue is, enough details to allow us to understand how you're managing it. Sometimes we will require who's involved, and I'll come on to that as well. But then if we need anything further, we'll come back to you, okay? The Commission expects these types of incidents to be reported to it, even if the charity trustees have already reported them to the police or another regulator or another funder or anybody else. For charities that are registered in one location but operating in another across the UK, any serious incident should be reported to the charity regulator where the organisation is registered. Okay. Hopefully that's not a big issue for those in the room, but if you're registered with Northern Ireland and you're operating in Scotland, report the incident to us, and then we have contacts about informing our sister regulators. It should also be reported to the relevant statutory agencies in the jurisdiction where the incident occurred. So if that incident occurred in Scotland, there is still that obligation on you reporting it to, for example, the health agency or the appropriate persons in Scotland, as well as to the regulator where you're registered. Clear as mud? Yeah? Okay. Yep. Thanks. So whistleblowing, we're also going to just talk briefly about whistleblowing, and don't worry, I am coming back to serious incident reporting and safeguarding. So according to the UK Charity Protect, formerly Public Concern at Work, whistleblowing was when an employee tells an employer, a regulator, customers, the police or the media about a wrongdoing, risk or malpractice they are aware of through their work. All charities should include a whistleblowing policy as part of their safeguarding measures. Beneficiaries, staff and volunteers need to be able to report an incident in a safe and measured way without reprisal. Charity trustees need a means to access information which might not reach them through the normal channels or which might be deliberately withheld. Unfortunately, we see ourselves a few incidents where staff have reported incidents up the line, but they actually never reached the charity trustees. And in fairness to the charity trustees, once we speak to them, if they had been aware of the incidents, they would have dealt with the matter appropriately, or certainly in an entirely different way than how it had been managed to date. So there has to be that mechanism for bringing incidents to the charity trustees, those who are in control and governance of the charity, to allow them the chance to manage the situation effectively. Okay. I'm managing my throat, so apologies. So, if something does go wrong, you should take immediate action to obviously prevent or minimise any further harm, loss or damage. Report it to the Commission immediately, and I'll talk again about what we do, okay? Report it to the police if you suspect a crime has been committed, and to any other statutory agency, regulator and stakeholders to whom the charity is accountable. Plan what you say to your staff and where appropriate, volunteers, members, the public and the media. The media is obviously a big issue as well, and to be honest, again, where charity trustees have phoned me to talk about an incident, I say to them and recommend to them that reporting it to us will at least allow you to say to the media that we have taken action, we have reported this to the Commission, this is what we're doing, we are working with the Commission. Whereas if we don't know of an incident and the media comes to us, then it's an entirely different situation. And even if the issue is not a serious issue, we will take seriously issues that have not been reported to us, if you understand. We will have to devote resources to finding out why incidents haven't been reported to us in the first instance. Is there something more wrong? Is there a greater problem? And that's not a good situation for either the charity or ourselves. And then review what happened and take steps to prevent it from happening again. This may include reviewing the internal controls and procedures and are seeking appropriate help from professional advisors. So hopefully you see, there's no rocket science about this, there's nothing new to you really, but it's just about ensuring that what you have in place is actually working and then talking to us. Okay. So in our guidance, which is available on our website, so the Serious Incident Reporting Guidance, this includes every type of serious incident, not just safeguarding. But actually in the next year, we hope to, not making an absolute commitment, but we hope to, if resources permit, produce serious incident reporting particular to safeguarding incidents and give some more detailed guidance and advice in it. But at the minute, this is still where you would go to consider have I the appropriate policies and procedures in place, and what do I do when an incident happens, and how do I report it to the Commission? So in it, there's examples of the incidents to be reported and examples of what not to be reported. I'm going to talk about the assets one before I come on to the safeguarding, because this will show you what I mean about we can't give every example for every situation within a charity. The assets example talks about if there's a staff member who has stolen £100 from the charity's petty cash, right? Now, if you're in a large organisation and you have hundreds of staff, and that's a low-grade member of staff, and you've dealt with it, and it's £100 compared to your £1 million of income, then it's not really that serious that you would suggest reporting it to us, okay? However, if the staff member was the chief executive, then you're in a entirely different ball game altogether. So regardless of the level of income, regardless of how many staff you have, this is someone who has control and influence and direction of the charity, and therefore that is a serious incident and that must be reported, even if it's only £100. So the examples for safeguarding, I believe are pretty obvious, but we'll go through them anyway. So examples of incidents to be reported: a beneficiary or a member of their family alleges that they have suffered abuse of serious harm while attending a charity event with a charity volunteer. You must immediately report that to us. An allegation that a staff member has physically assaulted a beneficiary, again, obviously report to us immediately. And repeated medication errors to beneficiaries in a care home. So we would expect you to report that to us as well. But conversely, against those examples, we give ones that need not be reported. Unusual aggressive behaviour by a beneficiary towards a staff member. Okay. PSNI called to a charity's premises because a beneficiary is drunk and disorderly. Okay. Beneficiary in a care home received the wrong medication as a one-off error. They're just examples. If any of those incidents lead to other issues that then could pull the charity's reputation into disrepute, then the best advice is to report it to us. Okay? So the other types of serious incident are previously mentioned, but I'll just go into them. Financial crimes, fraud, theft, money laundering. Large donations from an unknown or unverifiable source or suspicious financial activity using the charity's funds. I don't think many charities now receive big bags of cash at their front door, but money laundering is something that we take very seriously. It is an issue, and therefore if you do receive unverifiable or unknown large donations, then you're best reporting that to us as a serious incident. Other significant financial loss, links to terrorism or extremism, including proscribed organisations, individuals designated under terrorist asset freezing laws, or kidnapping of staff. Those are all pretty obviously serious incidents. And other significant incidents such as insolvency, forced withdrawal of banking services, or actual or suspected criminal activity within or involving either the charity staff, or the name of the charity. Okay. Sometimes, as I said, incidents which appear to be of low value can pose serious risks to a charity, as they may be a sign that individuals are trying to avoid detection. Repeated or frequent incidents can be symptomatic of weak financial controls and poor governance, leaving the charity vulnerable to fraud and theft. Therefore, if there have been repeated incidents of low value, we would again say that you should report those to the Commission. Okay. So in the guidance, there's a reporting checklist as well about what you need to provide details of. It's who you are in connection with the charity. We want to make sure that the report that we're receiving is actually from the charity and that the charity trustees know of it. So that the authority you have to report on behalf of the charity trustees doesn't have to be the charity trustees, but if it's your representative or someone who's the main contact for the Commission, that's equally fine. We just need to know that everyone is aware of the incident. So next point, who in the trustee body is aware of the incident? What happened and when the charity first became aware of it, the action being taken to deal with the incident and prevent future problems, and whether and when it has been reported to the police or another regulator, including any official numbers. So, that sounds like a lot, but as I said, 1 or 2 pages of A4 just describing the incident, who's involved, what happened, and what, more importantly, you're doing about it will be sufficient for us. And if we have any doubt, we will come back to you for further information. So the responsibility, though, just to reaffirm, the responsibility for reporting serious incidents rests with the charity trustees. Okay. In practice, you may choose to delegate this to someone else within the charity. However, all charity trustees are responsible for ensuring that their charity reports serious incidents and does so in a timely manner. Hence, the declaration when you're submitting your accounts at the end of the year. Okay. All right, thanks. The how-to is easy enough. We've set up an email address just called concerns@charitycommissionni.org.uk. Access to that email box is restricted to a number of key staff, and therefore you can be assured that the information that you supply to us will be held confidentially. If you include serious incident report in the title of the subject line, then it'll help us identify that a report has been issued. And then all we say whenever you're submitting online is don't forget to look at that checklist just to make sure that you've covered all the issues in reporting the incident to us. Okay. So why report a serious incident? My next slide is what happens, which I think what is most people would be interested in, but we're getting there. So the Commission needs to ensure charity trustees comply with their legal obligations and their legal duties. By reporting a serious incident, charity trustees demonstrate that they have identified a risk to the charity and that they are taking appropriate action to deal with it now and in the future. It's very important because protecting the assets, reputation and beneficiaries of the charity are essential charity trustee responsibilities. The potential for reputational damage can be lessened, however, if charity trustees can show that they handled the incident well. This will also allow the Commission, if asked by the media or other stakeholders, to state that the charity trustees handled the situation responsibly in reporting to us. And there's not many in the media, but you might have noticed 1 or 2 in the media where incidents have happened in Northern Ireland, they have said, and we have reported this to the Commission, and the media has come to us and checked that, and we have been able to say, yes, they have, and we're working with the charity trustees to resolve the incident and go forward to make sure that nothing happens like this again, okay? So we will be proactive if you are proactive, is the message. The Commission may need to offer regulatory advice or guidance. Timely reporting allows the Commission to identify problems in charities at an early stage and, where appropriate, to provide regulatory advice and guidance to charity trustees to ensure they meet their legal duties. We have, under our inquiries, I'm head of inquiries and compliance. Compliance is all our accounting issues, but inquiries is all investigations, but it includes serious incidents and matters of material significance that auditors would bring to us. So a regulatory guidance is where we would issue guidance but expect the charity to demonstrate how they've complied with it. So if there is a serious incident and something has gone fundamentally wrong and we identify a weakness that isn't being taken care of by the charity, we will give you guidance of how to deal with that. If appropriate, we may also consider other action, but where we give guidance, we will follow up as well. and make sure that it's been complied with. The Commission can also assess the risk to other charities. Serious incident reporting helps the Commission to gauge the volume and impacts of incidents on charities and to understand the risks facing the charity sector in Northern Ireland. I'll come on to it again, but this is where sometimes the name of people involved becomes relevant. And I know it's difficult sometimes to provide that information and people are worried about it, but you are providing the information to the regulator. You have legal authority to do so. There is standing within the Data Protection Act to allow you to share information with the regulator for regulatory purposes. And then you will know that we will treat that information confidentially. But what you might not know is that even if there is an incident and even if it's alleged that, and it's about a staff member or a volunteer, is you might not know how many other charities that staff member or volunteer is involved in. We may not know it either, but at least it'll give us the information to check. It'll allow us to identify through our systems whether he's known to us through a serious incident from another charity. And then sometimes there's a pattern and more appropriate action can be taken. So that's the purpose of us asking for the details of who's involved, even if the allegation is just that, an allegation. But we will act proportionately and appropriately with that information. Okay. Sorry. So what happens after a serious incident is reported? When a charity submits a serious incident report, the Commission will confirm that it's been received, first of all, and may take steps to verify the details within the report. For example, if you've said that you've reported to the police, we will sometimes contact the police and make sure that you have done so. We will assess the risk and the seriousness of the incident, but more importantly, we will assess what you're saying you're doing about it. Okay? And we will contact you again if we need more information about the incident, if we consider that your charity needs further regulatory advice and or guidance, if we need to use our legal powers to protect the charity's assets, and that would be where we think the incident isn't being handled properly or the charity trustees don't have the resources to handle the incident and protect the charity's assets properly. We'll also contact you if we require future updates. So if there's something that's happened and you've just reported to us, but you've told us we're managing this effectively and we agree, and you've appointed an independent investigator or whatever else to handle the incident properly, then we'll obviously ask for feedback and results of that before considering our next steps. Because what you won't want and what we won't do either is walk all over another investigation, okay? And then we will monitor your progress in dealing with the incident and keep in contact with you regarding it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our role and the declaration and some stats, but then I'm also going to give you some case studies where I think reporting the incident, what we do with it, really comes out to the fore, okay? So the annual monitoring return, how many people have submitted their accounts to the Commission to date? Hands up, yeah. And so have you seen the declaration at the end? There's a number of points, 4 points that you must tick as being truthful, that you have had regard to the Commission's public benefit guidance, that serious incidents have been reported to the Commission, and if not, why not? That if the charity works with children or vulnerable beneficiaries, that you have relevant policies in place and that the information provided is accurate. Now, not that anyone do this, it is actually an offence to provide the Commission with false or misleading information. So if we found that that declaration had been completed willfully and knowingly wrong, then we would have the powers to take appropriate action to report that offence. So all charities, no matter what their size or income, just to reiterate, are expected to report serious incidents to the Commission promptly. This is as soon as possible after it happens or immediately after you become aware of it. A secondary check: when a charity submits an annual monitoring return under our reporting programme, charity trustees must also declare whether all serious incidents or other matters have been brought to the Commission's attention. It is a criminal offence under Section 25 of the Charities Act, just to quote it, for any person to provide false or misleading information to the Commission. If charity trustees fail to report a serious incident that subsequently comes to light, the Commission may consider this to be mismanagement and take appropriate regulatory action, particularly if further abuse or damage has arisen following the initial incident. Okay. So what is our role in this? Our role is to ensure that charity trustees comply with their legal duties and responsibilities and are handling the incident responsibly, and where necessary, putting in place improved governance and internal controls in order to protect the charity and its beneficiaries from further harm. When reporting an incident to the Commission which has already been reported to the Health and Social Care Trust or the PSNI or other relevant regulator, charity trustees must only inform the Commission an incident has occurred or is alleged. A report has been made to a regulator and provide an incident report number and information as to whether the charity's policies and procedures have been followed. So we're not asking you to reinvent the wheel here. If you've already submitted and have a duty and responsibility to submit reports to the police or to another regulator, then just copy it or tell us that you have submitted that report and give us the details so that we can check it out with the appropriate body. Okay, apologies. So the number of serious incidents, just to give you some stats received. So in 2017, while our guidance came out in 2017, it's always been the responsibility of the charity trustees to report serious incidents. So it came out in 2017, but as you can see, in that year, we only received 9 serious incident reports, and one of which dealt with safeguarding matters. Now, prior to the alert that I referred to at the beginning of this presentation, following the Oxfam incident, in 2018 we had only received 4 further serious incident reports, one of which again was relevant to safeguarding. But since then we have received 87 serious incident reports, 29 of which include safeguarding matters. Now, there's a variety of severity of safeguarding matters, but at least to us it's an indication that people are now understanding, or at least beginning to understand, their responsibility to report serious incidents to the Commission. Okay. You probably can't read that very well, but serious incident reports will remain open with the Commission until the charity can provide the Commission with sufficient information to demonstrate that the incident is being handled in line with our reporting guidance. Of the 21 which remain open, so there was 100 in that stats on the previous page, 79 we have closed and 21 remain open. 7 of that 21, so a third, are safeguarding matters. 5 financial impropriety, including fraud or theft. 4 relate to legal and technical issues. 3 relate to engagement with the Commission or another regulator. 1 is about managing the charity's reputation, and 1 is about the closure of a charity, the fact that it's no longer a going concern. In some of these instances, we note that the charity's internal investigation remains ongoing, and therefore we have kept our file ongoing to ensure that it's appropriately followed up in a timely manner. Okay. So of the 79 then that we closed, we do consider the reporting of a serious incident in itself as a high-risk issue so that we can appoint appropriate resources to it. However, how the charity handles the serious incident has a direct impact on the mitigation of that risk. So in the majority of instances, the fact that the charity has submitted a serious incident report and demonstrated to us how they're handling that has allowed us to close the incident. Okay. So of the 79 closed serious incident reports, 28 were in respect of fraud and theft, and 24, again around a third, in respect of safeguarding issues, and then the rest were on those other issues. Okay. All right. So just to reiterate, and you can see the stats from what I was saying earlier. So as I previously mentioned, following the well-publicised incidents involving Oxfam and overseas safeguarding issues, in February 18, we contacted all registered charities that had indicated that they worked with vulnerable adults and our children. They were reminded of the requirement to have appropriate policies in place. And this communication resulted in a number of charities alerting us to ongoing and historic incidents. So those big numbers, a lot of those came immediately after our alert went out in February. So, but hopefully that alert has instilled that message through charity trustees that there is that legal requirement to manage their charity effectively, and that includes reporting incidents to the Commission. Okay, so the case study I'm going to talk about, and I'm not going to mention names, okay, unfortunately, but what happened was we received a concern. So a concern is the investigation side, not a serious incident, not coming from the charity trustees. This concern came from a member of the public. And it was in relation to an alleged assault by a member of staff against a vulnerable beneficiary, okay, in a charity. Now, because of the seriousness of the issue, we've written to the charity and we got inadequate responses. Because the first question that we asked was, has this happened? Right? Because we want to verify the issues, we are proportionate. But if it has happened, why didn't you report this to us? This is a member of staff allegedly assaulting a vulnerable beneficiary. Even if it's only an allegation, under our guidance, you must report that to us. But we received inadequate responses to our requests, to those answers, and for other information. Now, further examination revealed that the charity was not adhering to safeguarding policy that was in existence and other governance issues within it, and they did not recognise the risk or responded to it appropriately. So what we have done is, as I mentioned, we have different levels of investigations. Our most serious level of investigation is a statutory inquiry. A statutory inquiry allows the Commission to use its powers to protect the charity's assets and beneficiaries. And our powers go as far as, in extreme cases, removing and therefore banning a person from being a charity trustee, removing staff members, appointing interim managers, and putting in financial restrictions to protect the charity going forward. So this case, because they hadn't reported it to us, because they couldn't demonstrate that they recognised the risk or that they were dealing with it properly, we escalated and opened a statutory inquiry. And to date, we have now appointed an interim manager to take control of the day-to-day running of that charity. So as you can see, that's a very significant issue, but we have dealt with it appropriately, recognising that the charity trustees didn't. Now, our second case study, just to give you a converse example, the inquiries team received a serious incident reporting to an alleged assault by a member of staff against a vulnerable beneficiary. Almost identical circumstances, and we haven't made this up just for the presentation. This is true. The charity reported the serious incident to us, okay? What they did was they said, here's who's involved, here is what happened. We have appointed an investigation team. We have suspended the individual to protect any future harm, even though it's an allegation. Their investigation, then they were able to come back to us and say, led to the conclusion that there was sufficient evidence to proceed to a full disciplinary hearing, and they dealt with that staff member appropriately. They also confirmed to us that they informed the relevant authorities, the police and their funders and the appropriate other regulators. I'll not say too much more so I don't identify anyone. But they did all that through us just talking to them and saying, thank you for giving us the report. We see that you've appointed a team. Let us know what has happened. They told us what happened, and then we closed the case. No investigation, no need for us to use our powers. Charity trustees demonstrating to us that they were acknowledged the risk, aware of their responsibilities, and that they were able and did take appropriate action. We didn't even go out to visit them. This was all done by correspondence. Exactly the same situation as case study 1, only charity trustees, we ended up having to appoint an interim manager to their exclusion. Okay, so you can see it does work, and we will act proportionately, and we will allow you to demonstrate to us that you're dealing with the incident properly. Okay, and really what I want to say about that in plain English is it's nothing to be frightened about. If you reported an incident to us, because as I said, incidents happen no matter what procedures and policies you have in place. As long as you can demonstrate to us that you're dealing with it properly, then we're quite content to let you get on with it. Okay? I'm nearly there. I might be well ahead of time. I'm not sure. I didn't keep an eye on the time, but nearly there. So, statutory obligations, just to repeat, every charity that works with children or vulnerable adults at risk of harm directly or indirectly through a partner organisation has a range of statutory obligations to a variety of regulators. Further guidance on matters relating to safeguarding may be accessed via NI Direct, the Department of Health and Volunteer Now, but also contact your helper groups. I think it's great that these type of events are organised to help share information, and you should be congratulated for doing it. And then, just to reiterate our expectations, charity trustees are expected to submit a serious incident report to the Commission if any of the following things occur. There has been a breach of procedures at the charity which has put beneficiaries at risk. This includes a failure to carry out checks which would have identified that a person is disqualified in law under safeguarding legislation from holding a position in the charity working with children or vulnerable adults. So that's back to those 2 decision trees that will help you, and those decision trees are available through our website as well. There's links there that will bring you to the appropriate sites. So just continuing with our expectations then, beneficiaries of the charity, adults or children, have been or alleged to have been or are being abused or mistreated while under the care of the charity or by someone connected with the charity, for example, a charity trustee, an employee or a volunteer. If you use an agency to deliver services abroad and you're aware of an issue through the agency, you must still report that incident to us as well, because that, A, is within your control, and we would expect to see what you're doing about what has happened with the agency members. And we also expect to see how you react to it as well, how you react to the incident. Do you continue to use the agency? Or is there another means for you to report the incident somewhere else to the proper authorities? Okay. There has been an incident alleged or actual where someone has been in or is being abused or mistreated, and this is connected with the activities of the charities. Incidents include allegations or actual abuse occurring overseas. And this is where the charity staff or volunteers are working to provide services to children or vulnerable adults, or where a close relationship exists with a delivery organisation, such as the agency, providing services to children or vulnerable adults overseas. Okay, and then quickly on data protection. In reporting to the Commission, charity trustees must make full and frank disclosure to include the names of any alleged or actual offenders. And I think I've spoken enough about why we need that detail, but it's just reiterated at this point. It's necessary for the Commission to carry out its general and regulatory functions under the Act and is consistent with Article 6 of the General Data Protection Regulation. Charity trustees must adhere to other statutory or internal safeguarding requirements, including data protection policies and procedures, and should not include personal details of alleged or actual victims of the crime. Okay, that's not something that we require and that you should provide to us. In fact, if you do, it's an issue that we would raise seriously with you. Okay, and just finally, I know I've said it twice, but to reiterate, providing names will ensure that we may take appropriate steps to ensure that should this individual be involved with other charities, potential risks can be properly mitigated and managed. Okay. Final advice is act promptly. As I said right at the beginning, when we get phone calls, I interrupt people and just say, if you're in any doubt, just issue the report to us. Because if we find out afterwards, we may consider it as mismanagement. We may consider that you haven't managed the issue properly, or that the worst case, that you haven't identified the risk properly. Okay? So report it to us. And if we need further information, or if we're happy with what you're doing, we'll let you know. So if charity trustees have grounds to suspect that such incidents may have occurred, it is important to take action promptly. As well as reporting to the Commission, again, depending on the incident, you need to report it to the proper authorities. The Commission is not responsible for dealing with incidents of actual abuse or mistreatment, and it does not administer safeguarding legislation. We cannot prosecute or bring criminal proceedings. However, we may refer concerns on to other proper authorities, including the police, the Health Trust, Access and I, and the Disclosure and Barring Service, as well as the specialist bodies such as Education or Health and Social Care. Okay, but we do need to know of the incidents. Okay, well that's my presentation in brief, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have at all. Okay.
Yeah,
sir.
If you could go back to statutory obligations slide, could you elaborate on what they are in relating to NI Direct and Volunteer NI?
So, sorry, what page is this? Sorry.
It's the statutory obligations slide.
Page 13.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a different slide on my handout. Sorry, can you hand me the... Oh, this one? NI Direct. Well, NI Direct is a statutory authority for a number of government agencies, so we've just mentioned it in there that you may have a responsibility through NI Direct for reporting.
It's really Access NI, that's where the only regulated authority would be surely under them, is it not?
Yeah.
Just what's the Volunteer Now one that we would have to report to them?
Volunteer Now, particularly if you're aware of an incident and it's an overseas and it's pertaining to a volunteer, it's useful to report that to them so that they can also be aware in case they have knowledge that you don't have. On how that volunteer is working on other charities or in other areas overseas. So
but that would be a compulsory then, would it?
It's not.
Can I just say, I'm from Volunteer Now.
Yes.
Seamus, that's probably just in terms of us providing some support and guidance to organisations.
Yeah,
We
so
would have organisations that would contact us that would be in situations And it's probably in relation to the minimum standards that are endorsed by the Department of Health
Yeah.
and Social Care.
It's more just I read from the slide that they're a regulatory authority.
Yeah, no, I get what you're reading from a side, and probably the wording could be improved, but what we mean there in terms of statutory obligations, you have statutory obligations to manage the incident properly and manage your charity's procedures and policies properly, and we would expect you through that statutory obligation that if you're aware of an incident and involves a volunteer, to report it to Volunteer Now. Okay. Not a legal obligation. Yeah. Sorry, yes.
In relation to reporting allegations that are made against members of staff of the charity, what about malicious allegations that are made in social media?
Well, it obviously depends on the seriousness of it, and what I would advise you is to report it to us, because obviously, do you know that it's a malicious allegation immediately? If you do, then you could just report it to us and say that this allegation is here. It potentially affects the reputation of the charity because it involves the charity staff and it's in social media. So report it to us for those purposes, and then demonstrate to us how you know that it's malicious in a brief detail, and if we need any further information, then we could come back to you on that. Any issue that is in the public domain has the potential to affect the charity's reputation, so we would view that as a potential serious incident, and the best advice then is to report it to us.
Can I just also say on that, I have our minimum standards and guidance here with me today, and you can get this free, to download from our website. And yes, whilst we provide support and guidance, what we're ultimately going to be telling any charity who contacts us about a safeguarding issue is that you need to report it to the trust and or the police, just as what's in our guidance here. So, as Miles has said, it's not a statutory obligation to report to us that you have an issue, but we can sometimes provide you with some help around it. So if anyone wants to see these afterwards, they're just sitting down at the back and you can download them for free. They can help you put your policy together and your procedures, so they outline the standards which you should be including in your documents. And there's also some information about training that we provide as well around safeguarding. Okay.
Any other questions?
Does anybody in the room represent a charity that is yet to join the register of charities? Okay, but for the videos.
That's a valid point, that regardless of whether you're registered or not, if there is a serious incident, you should report it to the Commission. That's what I was trying to hint at the beginning when I was saying that the guidance has been in place just from November 17, but the responsibility to report always exists, okay? Whether you're registered or not as a charity with the Commission, okay? I hope I've managed expectations here. I mean, the people are sometimes fearful of bringing the issues to a regulator because they expect a full-blown investigation. But we're honest in our case studies there. If you can demonstrate to us, without going into war and peace, that you're managing the risk effectively, you've identified the risk and you're managing it and you're protecting future harm, then we will be quite happy to allow you to go on with that. Provide you support if you need it, but to allow you to get on with that, we will not come barging through your door and carry out a full-blown investigation if we feel that you're handling it completely properly. Okay.
So I just have a couple of questions actually,
Yes.
just sort of picked up on the way through around case studies, if you don't mind, because I think probably simpler in my thinking it should help other people as well. You mentioned about the statutory inquiry.
Yes.
At least as one of the highest levels of investigation. Can you tell me who does that statutory inquiry?
We do that, the Commission does that. We have the power to appoint others, but to date, all the investigations are carried out by the Commission itself. It'll actually be myself or James and another
conducting that,
company.
you will then be asking for access to information that the charity will hold.
Yeah, once we open a statutory inquiry, we have the power to direct you to give us that information directly, whether you hold it on the charity's premises or in your home or anywhere else. And our orders that we would issue on the opening of a statutory inquiry are equivalent to High Court orders. So failure to comply with those is a criminal offence as well.
And just my second question was in regard to the second case study. You had referenced that after the internal investigation, the charity would provide you with the outcome
Yes.
of what that entailed and what they had done in relation to that and who they had on board. Can I just clarify your expectations in relation to the detail of that information? Is it the charity's summary of the outcome? Because potentially whenever we're talking about safeguarding matters, the safeguarding investigation is not undertaken directly in the first instance by the charity, it's undertaken by the trust or the PSNI. So is it that it's just the charity's summary of the outcomes, or is it something more that you expect or anticipate?
Okay, if they've reported to the police and they give us, we'll ask for the police incident reference number and we'll contact the police and find out what's happening. What we expect from the charity is their brief summary reports. And it is a brief summary report. It can be as much as we've conducted our own internal investigation in accordance, in cooperation with the police, and we've allowed them to get on with their bit, but through our procedures we have taken this step and that step. We have suspended the person, or we have dismissed them, or we have issued disciplinary under gross misconduct for whatever the purposes is. Then, you know, it can be as brief as a paragraph or two, and then if we need further information, we'll come back to them. You know, in that actual case study, it was literally 2 pages from start to finish, and that was enough
I
for
think
us.
that's reassuring for people, because
Yes.
there have been questions locally asked whenever the trust is completing an investigation, do they send the trust's report? And certainly that hasn't been our advice, that if that report has been requested, that will come via the trust.
We have a statutory legal gateway within the Charities Act that allows us to share information with other public bodies anyway. So if it was a trust report, we would, and we feel that we need access to that for whatever reason, then we can ask for that through the statutory gateway, section 24 of our Act, that allows us to receive from and share to any other public body, including the police in Northern Ireland. So in most cases though, the fact that another body has carried out an investigation and the one-line summary of that investigation is enough for us. Really, the only time that we would want to see more details is if it was a really serious allegation but no action was taken. We'd want to understand why, so we may then come back and ask for more details of the report, just to understand why, and if we're content, that would be the end of it. Yeah. Anything I missed there, James?
No, that's it.
Okay, well, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.